And we should be live on the 4th episode. How are we doing, Ethan?
Not too bad, Murph. Just me today.
Yeah, we're a little bit sparse on members, aren't we? Unfortunately. We've had 2 people drop out, both Dan and Barnes, so we're just here ourselves today.
It's fine. Two best people here. That's all that matters.
Exactly, right? 2 smartest. Anyway.
Exactly.
I wanted to firstly start by chatting a little bit about what's been going on in the news today in regards to Gary Lineker and his controversial tweets. And get your opinion on them, because I know you're quite an advocate for free speech.
Yeah.
And I don't know where you'll sit on this exactly, so it'll be interesting.
Sounds good.
But yeah, so Gary Lineker tweeted today, or it may have been, it's the 7th of March, it's a couple of days ago actually now, in response to the new immigration bill, which I'm sure you're aware of, that's been put through. It's relatively controversial. We'll go into that. But yeah, so Gary Lineker tweeted saying, "There is no huge influx. We take far fewer refugees than any other major European countries. This is just an immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in language that is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 30s. And I'm out of order, question mark." So that was a tweet that Gary Lineker put out on the 7th of March, which has obviously had a lot of backlash from different people, both in government and out of government. So as a little bit of context to that, he was referring to the new immigration bill that has it been passed through yet, Ethan?
No.
No, but it's what they're suggesting in government at the minute, which was in relation to, it says here that Gary Lineker's tweet was referencing new immigration laws. Sunak stated, if they come here illegally, it will result in their detention and swift removal, referring to people who come here illegally. I think it was 45,000 last year in the UK. So I think that was the figure. So BBC announced that that Gary Lineker, by tweeting that in reference to what I just said, broke editorial guidelines with the tweet. Lineker said he's free to voice his own personal opinions. And the BBC director said that Lineker has been asked to step back after getting involved in party political matters. So after all of that being put together, what do you think of the tweet? And do you think it's just that is being asked to step back? I don't think it's being asked. I think it's you're suspended sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I mean, I agree with him. The bill's horrendous.
Mm.
We'll go into like the finicky bits of it in a
Mm-hmm.
bit, because it's got some pretty serious, long-reaching ramifications. But ultimately, it comes down to two different ways of seeing it, which is the skeptic way of seeing it and the BBC's sort of stance. So I assume the stance they're coming from is, tell me if you agree on this, that he's supposed to be impartial and he's not, and he's making it quite public.
Yeah, pretty much. It's supposed to be, or because he's a public figure. I think most people who are public figures, like presenters and stuff, they're almost not supposed to have views, because they're supposed to be impartial and just a spokesperson for the BBC. So by him developing views politically, it's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be the guy who says, "Hey, and welcome to Match of the
Yeah.
Day," you know? So by doing that, he represents the BBC, because he's almost like the face of Match of the Day. So by doing that, then it has negative connotations on the BBC. So it's a weird one, but yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
I mean, for people in that camp, I would just like quite handily point to Clarkson as an example. Like, the amount of stuff Clarkson said and he got away with is ridiculous.
Yeah, but then
And
towards the end
yeah,
he didn't, right? And I think that's what it
yeah,
feels
true.
like almost. It feels like you used to be able to have an opinion politically and also be able to have a job, whereas now it feels as though you're supposed to stay very impartial, like you said. But I don't know. Do you think that he should be impartial? Do you think he obviously has his right to his opinion, but by stating that opinion publicly, is he going against his job in essence? Is he negatively representing the BBC and that deserves him to be fired or to be suspended like he has been?
Ooh, it's so techie. It's like the
It
it's
is.
just part of the nature of the private sector and having a job, or even the public sector as well. If you say something that negatively impacts the company, ultimately we do not have free speech legislation in this country like they do in America. You're not protected by any constitution like you are in America. There's no First Amendment. If you say something that makes a company look bad, they can turn around and go, off you go, mate. We're not going to be associated with you. And so is it within their right to do that? Yes. Do I agree with it? Probably not. Like you said, I'm a big free speech advocate. If it was up to me, we'd have the same sort of rules they do have in America, where you have your opinion and you can say it as long as it's not inciting violence or anything like that. So I don't really agree with it. And there's this whole rabbit hole with the BBC at the minute. I've seen posts all on Instagram saying there's a whole David Attenborough thing that's gone on as well recently,
Mm.
where something about his sixth episode of his documentary is potentially going to anger people on the right or the Conservative Party members or something. And so they've pulled it from the BBC. Now, that in combination with this incident is like, okay, what's going on here? Something's clearly happening. And I think, like I said, if you wanted to be a skeptic, you could say that the Tories are grasping at straws now. They need to protect their image and the voters that they've got left, which is not many, and they
Mm.
need a leg to stand on. It can't be the economy because they've fucked that. It can't be the housing system. They fucked that. It can't be climate change. They've got no leg to stand on, and they've just chosen immigration to be their issue to die on. It feels like they've got to stand. They've got to appease to someone, and so they're looking to appease to the hardline anti-immigration party members and members of the public.
So do you think that it's very similar what the Tory party is doing to what Trump did when he had his election in regards to the wall? It's one of those ones where he needs he's almost grasping at something. They need something that's going to get in voters. And it's
Yeah,
the thing is with these things that are going to get voters, it's going to be controversial. It's going to be a Marmite instance, where it gains people or it distastes people, right?
yeah,
And I mean, I personally think this immigration bill was an attempt to grasp people that's backfired, potentially. I mean, I don't know if it's fully backfired. I haven't gone into it as deep as probably what you have, but it's got a lot of backlash, especially with the Home Secretary. She was talking about, I think she commented on that there's billions of people who would come to the UK, or wanting to come to the UK. And it's like that inflammatory language of just trying to
yeah,
make things sound so much worse than what they are, um, trying to anger people to make them like lead them into wanting the policy, right?
yeah,
Which is what I watched Good Morning Britain, with her on it, and they were ridiculing her for doing that because she was like, oh yeah, the language is finicky, but it's fine. And they're like, no, you were saying billions of people are wanting to come to UK. That's just not true. So you can't spread
yeah.
misinformation that ties in with your policy that you're trying to get through to try and get people to vote for it, or try and get it through, or try and gain more voters in the election and things like that. But I
Oh
don't know.
yeah, yeah. They definitely have an obligation, in the public eye to not be inflammatory, to not blow things out of proportion. And you mentioned Trump. I think Trump was in like a 50 times better position than what our government's in
No,
now.
I agree. I agree.
Like they are fucked, and there's similarities in the sense that I think all political parties have sort of turned a new leaf after the Trump era because of the power of memes and the power of social media that he
Mm,
demonstrated. Um,
yeah,
but if you look on the Instagram, I follow the Tories on Instagram because it's hilarious watching the stuff they post. They'll post something about this new bill or whatever, and you read it and you're just like, this is complete bollocks. Or even better, look in the comments and all the top rated comments are like, shut up, you're lying, shut up. And people aren't buying it anymore. And ultimately, what else do you have if you don't have the this public image? But because they're so far gone now, they can actually just bin off their public image because they're not getting in. They know they're not getting in.
everyone
So
knows.
yeah, and so it's like, okay, how do we retain the most seats? We have to tackle one of the issues we put in our manifesto. Oh bloody hell, we have to do our jobs. Let's just do it in the most heavy-handed. It's exactly like the Scottish thing we spoke about the other day.
Mm.
Is the most heavy-handed response they could have gone for. Whenever there's a solution to an issue, they just bring the sledgehammer down, nuclear option, no deliberation whatsoever. Let's just hit it on the head and see what happens. That'll make people happy, right? No, no, ignore all the flaws, ignore the fact that these poor women who might have been sexually trafficked into the UK. And this was a tweet by a Labour, might have been a reply on the tweet that the Tories put out about this, saying that if a lady comes in, she's been sexually trafficked, and she's now got an option. Does she either voice her opinion or try and come forward about her experience and get sent to fucking Rwanda,
Mm.
or does she keep quiet about it and continue to get abused? So it's and the Tories' response to that was, oh well, it's such a minority of people, you can't have a rule, whatever. And it's like, well, hang on, that's the whole point of policy, is that you take care of instances like that, and that you deal with the most extreme instances and the corruption and the misfortune that happened to people, and you introduce legislation to deal with that. You don't just say, oh, whatever, it's too complicated to fucking deal with all these little instances. It's your fucking job, mate.
Mm.
It's just so annoying. Like, I think that it just shows how unqualified these people are to do their fucking jobs, and it makes me angry because they're so heavy-handed and they don't want to get into the nitty-gritty stuff, or they just want to ignore it, or they don't care about their public image. Exactly like you said,
Mm.
they'll use whatever language they want. They'll use inflammatory language, and they probably are thinking, oh well, it worked for Trump,
Mm.
and it's like, no, it's a completely different instance, and it just makes me so fucking angry, man. Honestly, I could
Yeah.
go on and rant about it for ages, and I'm not saying there's some big conspiracy, because I don't want to get, it's all allegedly, this whole
Mm.
like Gary Lineker, um, is how affiliated is the BBC with the Tories? What's his name, Richard Sharp, helping Boris Johnson get a £500,000 loan
Mm.
from his cousin, like officiating his loan, and then
Yeah.
he's made chairman of the BBC afterwards. It's like, oh, that's interesting. What sort of connections are going on there? But it's all allegedly.
Mm.
Um, so fucking hell, there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down. And sorry, that was a bit of a rant,
No, no,
but
you're completely fine.
but yeah, that's pretty much my take on it.
Yeah, no, the legislation's. I think the legislation is very controversial as it stands. But to wrap up on it, do you think what the BBC has done to Gary Lineker is justified?
Now, this is where it gets like complicated, because technically he should be impartial in terms of his obligation to the BBC, and if he's got it in a contract or something, or legislatively speaking, perhaps
Mm-hmm.
there is a leg to stand on that he's supposed to be impartial. But if they're going to take that route, they have to impose the same level of discipline with everyone, and they don't. If he'd said something slightly different, or if it was someone else saying it, then I guarantee it wouldn't have been the same response.
And
And so,
as well, what you said earlier, the one before we start the pod, it's about positives and negatives as well. It's a bad thing because it's a negative and it's being shown. It makes everything controversial. But if someone's not impartial and saying positives about the government, that also has to be dealt with the same hammer that the negatives does.
yeah,
The
but it won't.
negatives get more light, but they won't. You know,
It won't.
um,
And
which
it's
is just
interesting because it's
interesting.
like a whole U-turn. If you'd gone back sort of 2 years, there's a huge sort of upset in the core Tory voter base with the BBC's portrayal of farming, and
Mm,
specifically like um, ownership of shotguns and badger and fox hunting, and there's this whole big issue in the Tory voter base with this, because the BBC's quite normally outspoken about this. But then on issues like this, they seem very pro-government. And so it's like, okay, well,
yeah,
is this because they've got a new chairman? Is this because there's some politics going on behind the scenes? Is this just an act of pure chance? Are they actually just attempting to balance out? I don't know. It's just
yeah,
so complicated, and it just doesn't sit right with me, because exactly like you say, they're not imposing the same level of discipline with everyone, and so they don't have a leg to stand on. They have to do it
yeah.
with everyone, and they're not.
I mean, personally, in regards to the question, I think, as far as I stand, Gary Lineker, he should remain impartial whilst he's being a host of Match of the Day. Whilst he's doing his job, he should remain impartial. But like any other human being, he has opinions. And as long as those opinions aren't hate speech, they're not racist, they're not anything that is either illegal or shouldn't be said, right? As long as it's something that's within legal boundaries, you have the right to your own opinion,
Yeah.
right? So I, it's hard, and because is the BBC state owned or is it private?
I'm not 100% sure on the specifics. This VAR, this BBC state owned or
Because I'm not
privatized.
sure.
It's a public corporation of the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, partially funded through a license paid by UK households. So yeah, that makes sense. It's partially funded by the TV license, and
Okay.
the government announced the license fee settlement. So the government enforces the TV license basically, and that's what funds the BBC, as far as I'm aware. And that's why
Okay.
there's always this huge call to cancel people's TV licenses, to strangle the BBC financially. I mean,
Mm,
there's a whole rabbit hole there. They're bullies. They take advantage of the elderly. We've had multiple letters through the door telling us they're going to send an enforcement agent over, and we're going to get fined thousands and thousands of pounds and stuff.
well, for
And
not
we're
paying the
like,
TV license.
yeah, for not having a TV license. And we're like, well, hang on a minute. Not only do you not have authority to enter my house because you're not the police, you need a
Mm,
warrant to enter my house. But I'm legislatively inclined enough to know my rights and to not let you in the house, and to know that we don't watch live TV here and that we have no obligation to pay our TV license.
mm,
We're fucking millennials. Who the fuck watches telly?
yeah.
You know. But
True.
like, honestly, well, I can't remember the last time I watched TV. But
Hmm.
some poor old lady or old man who, they get a letter through the door. It's got some big red stamps on it. We're going to come in your house. We're going to look at your TV. We're going to collect evidence. We're going to take you to court unless you pay this fine. This place bill, sorry. It's horrific. It's bullying tactics, and I can't believe it still happens in this country. That's why there's this whole meme of like, oh, you got a license for that TV, mate. You got a license for that
Mm,
fishing rod, mate.
mm,
Yeah, this country's just so overboard with legislation. It's absolutely ridiculous. In fact, I
yeah.
can't change my car color without informing, multiple different governmental bodies. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I mean, to quickly round off on the lineker thing, I think if the BBC is completely, I think it's supposed to be publicly funded but not state owned, because obviously it's supposed to be an impartial source of news that isn't aligned with the government. So I think it's privately
Yeah,
owned by or privately funded via TV licenses, like you said. But if so, I don't see how it annoys me that someone who's voicing their opinion not on that media but on other medias like Twitter, where you have your free speech,
yeah,
is then obviously losing his job over it or being suspended over it.
yeah,
And I think a lot of the people who are also on Match of the Day with Gary Lineker have also come off it with him in sort of solitude with him, which is
yeah.
I respect. I think Ian Wright and someone else, which is good to see. And I think Jermaine Genius is supposed to replace them, so they're not going to get very good viewings now. I don't
It'll be
think.
like the Top Gear thing, won't
Yeah, exactly.
it?
So it's one of those ones where okay, suspend him, but you're not going to get what you want. So,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. I
but
I do agree.
we'll finish there on that. But that was interesting anyway. But I wanted to speak about COVID, and the reason being is because I think 3 years ago next week it would have been where both me and you were kicked out of school because of the pandemic. Um, and it'd be nice to get both Barnes and Dan's opinion on this. So we might do this a different day with them or grab some other people on also.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to quickly think of how fucking crazy the pandemic was to think back 3 years ago. So I wanted to ask you what your average day looked like during the pandemic, if you can think back that far.
I think the pandemic was separated into two halves for me. So, first half of the pandemic was gaming, pretty much all
Yeah.
the time. Yep, Dota, it's fucking 8 hours a day with the boys.
Mm-hmm.
Loads of people probably in the same boat with different video games, whether. And then, and I was fine at that point. I was fine. It seemed fun, and didn't have a care in the world. Life just ground to a halt, whatever. Didn't have any obligations. Uni was a DOS because it was all online, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Second half was me having like the worst mental experience of my life and just having awful anxiety, not even wanting to leave my room, not having any connections with anyone. It was a huge effort for me to even like go out into the garden because I was that anxious all the time. I had huge health complications from stress. Like that's when I got gluten intolerant. Think
Mm,
they've got the same having adverse reactions to that has the same symptoms as the onset of a heart attack. So I was always really really stressed about that the whole time.
yeah,
And so
which won't
I had
help the heart attack potential either.
yeah, exactly. I'd ring the ambulance or ring the what is it 111, and they'd be like, yeah, it's probably nothing, but we've got to tell you to come in. So
Yeah,
that's stress. Um, and yeah, so overall it's separated into two halves. First half was not that bad and just dotting around, and then I think the effects after a while that the human psyche suffers from that
yeah,
level of solitude and not speaking to anyone, not seeing anyone, especially up at a faraway uni. It's just ridiculous, and
mm,
uh, that's really my personal experience. I could go on about that for episodes and episodes of the podcast, but that's a brief
yeah.
summary.
We'll dig into it a bit. I mean, I want to say I fully agree with what you said in regards to I think it's split. So the first half for me, we all thought, oh, 2 weeks off. Nice. Did you know what I mean? At the start, it was 2 weeks off. Cool. Don't have to go into school. A levels are probably cancelled. That's what we got told. Like at the time, it was like, yeah, you're probably not doing your exams straight away. We're gonna ask you to leave, and we think we're closing. And there was a couple of days of, are we gonna close? Are we gonna go home? Are we not? And then the
Yeah,
last day was kind of rushed, and it was all fun and games, and we can chat about that. But um, yeah, the first like month to was it 3 months first lockdown, something like that,
oh,
something like
something like that. Yeah,
yeah. Well, that those first three months, whatever the first lockdown was super chill. You just get up whenever the fuck you wanted, go on games, chill out. I think we were all quite stressed about A levels prior, so to have all of that relief gone and say
yeah,
you're not doing them anymore, you're just gonna get your grades. Cool. It's not under my control anymore. Do you know what I mean? So cool. We can just chill out, and we just fucking went on games, chilled out, did fuck all. It was great fun. And then like you said, you had that sort of weird phase where we went into the second half of it, where I mean, me personally, I was working a lot of it at Amazon in the summer. I think it was, I can't remember the exact day it was, or the exact dates, but in the summer I was working, and we went out of lockdown and then back into a lockdown. Remember that?
oh
Um,
yeah, that was the eat out to help out thing.
yeah,
That was horrendous, man. We all get like 2 weeks of freedom, and then
yeah,
afterwards they shut it all down again. You uni students with the discount we gave you, going out there
yeah.
spreading the virus. I can't believe it. It's like, oh fuck
Can't
off, mate.
believe you did what we wanted you to do. Fuck
Yeah,
you. Yeah, I remember that. I
blame
mean, bro,
us.
I
Go
went
on.
to one pub with my ex at the time, and I was just like, "Yeah, nice. This is quite cheap," and that was it. And then no, shut down again.
No, and it's
It's
your
quite
fault. You're
funny.
spreading the virus.
But yeah, I mean, and then the second half for me was just sort of working. Really, I had quite a dull time in the lockdowns. And then, like you said, when we went to uni, that was the first time going to uni. Man, our experience was shit in the first year. I think I
Yeah,
didn't go, so I went. I bought accommodation for the first year with the intention of going, obviously, like you would. And after 2 weeks, it started to be like, oh, the block started getting locked down. So the block adjacent to me, you couldn't leave the block for like a 2 week period. You couldn't leave because of COVID. And I was like, fucked if I'm going to be in this room by myself. Because as an 18-year-old kid, I was like, I can't deal with that shit. Like, I'll miss my ex, I'll miss my family, everyone
yeah,
just sitting in the room by myself. And then we got told, you can't leave the block. We're going to send food up to you. Oh, so I can't even get my own food now. Can't get anything. It's like, what the fuck was going on? It was like nuts.
yeah,
So yeah, I just stayed home like the whole first year of uni. I just literally every single lecture of my first year I did in bed, at home, in bed. I'd wake up, oh shit, got a lecture in 2 minutes. Guess you grab my laptop from the side table, whip it up, do the lecture, whatever, cool, put it down, and then just fucking do games for the rest of the day. Do you know what I mean? That
yeah,
was pretty much my whole first year of uni experience, which is shit, but it was kind of like the reality of the situation for most of us, right?
yeah.
Like, because you had a risk of if you went to uni and you wanted to socialize or party, you were facing like, there's people. Some of our mates got like a K fine and shit like that.
Yeah, there was one in Knots, £10,000. Imagine,
Yeah.
imagine looking back on that because you've paid £10,000 for having a party, and then
Mm,
guess what? The Tories have one, and they get
mm,
50 quid fine and a slap on the wrist, and it's like, oh my god, I would have been absolutely fucking furious if that was me.
yeah. It's one of those ones where I think a lot of people are just like with the whole Tory thing. They just want it to fly over now. Like they can't be asked to hear about. Oh, the party happened. Cool, move on. But for the people who had to pay the shitey fines, and the people, I mean, equally so. The thing is, in London, there was parties going on in London, regardless of like
Yeah,
through political, just in general. Like there was loads of parties in London, but like I'd feel so shit if I was to pay that fine and then be told the government did the same thing. So it's no different to when Tories they met up, and it's not even just like the fine in general. It's like people missed funerals, people missed seeing family members,
People's
and
loved ones are dying in the fucking hospital. You can't go and see them. You have to video call them if you're lucky and say, "Oh, goodbye, love you," and then they die.
yeah,
Meanwhile, everyone's having a fucking pint down the fucking
yeah.
down the Tory pub.
Bojo's doing a few keys and a few shots at the pub.
It's
It's crazy
it's
to think, really.
absolutely crazy, and it's, you know what, and it's actually quite clever what they've done. Bombard people with so much negative media, they just stop caring. It's
Yeah,
quite clever, you know.
it's a very British
Imagine
way of dealing with it.
imagine if that happened in France. And I love
Mm,
using France as an example. You know, they up the retirement age by 2 years. There's violent riots in the streets. You know,
yeah,
they did the exact same thing in the UK, and everyone's like, oh, guys, another day in the UK, another day in the life.
yeah.
Fucking hell! If the French government was having parties, they wouldn't have a country anymore. It would have split into duchies. Yeah, we would
French
have
Revolution
retaken
again.
Normandy. Germany would have walked in and had the Rhineland back. Like, oh my god.
No, I do agree. It's quite funny. It's all cultural, isn't it? I guess like the reaction to different
And we act
things.
like we're proud of it, like in the Blitz. Oh, keep calm, carry on, guys. It's not a good thing, mate. You know,
It can
actually,
be. It
I
can be.
in my I've my opinion on this has changed because I used to be quite patriotic in this sense. I used to think this whole keep calm and carry on attitude, yeah, great, quintessential part of being British. I think we're actually just pussies. Like we just don't want to. Like we're all too afraid to do anything. None of us can be asked. You know, and then when we do something, we had the COVID for lockdown protests. We have the protest of the war in Iraq. We have the protest of the Brexit protests, and it's millions and millions of people protesting. And the government's like, we don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
And so if you can't protest and they don't care, like these millions of people, then what? How are you supposed to express dissatisfaction? And then
yeah,
now they're even cutting down on the protests. Um, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. So yeah,
mm.
it just pisses me off. Again, you know, we're fucked as a country, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the whole keep calm and carry on. I think during a wartime scenario, fine, right? Shit happens, unfortunately, but I think as a country, it's a very British thing to just moan. Like we love a moan, we love a good moan,
Yeah,
like as Brits, and we'll have a moan, but we won't take any action on it.
yeah,
Which is different to the French, right? With your example, like
yeah,
they're
yeah.
so good at rioting,
It's
if you
two
know what
ends
I
of the
mean.
it's two ends of the extreme because now it's gotten to a point where they have a riot and Macron's like, oh, not another one.
And
Oh my god, guys! Right, everyone just don't do anything in Paris for like a day and it'll be fine.
yeah,
You know, so it's two ends of the extreme.
yeah, no, I do agree, but it is quite funny to think in reference. But let's think back to COVID. I want to know what was your best memory from COVID, if you can think back.
When we're all sat on Discord,
Mm-hmm.
we're waiting for the news to come out about A-level results. They
Yeah,
get released. Exams cancelled. You will use
yeah,
your predicted grades. Yeah, buddy. Straight on Dota. The next
mm-hmm.
4 months are at least are written off. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
but at the time, everyone's thinking, "Fucking fantastic. We're gonna meet up. Summer's gonna be fucking amazing. Like, we have best time ever." And then the reality slowly sets in. But that one day, I just have that one core memory of us all being on Discord and seeing that notification on BBC News, and that's the best day of COVID. One of the best days of my life, probably.
I mean, we were crying with laughter,
Yeah,
weren't
we
we? Like,
were.
it was like pure shock. Like, some people were like pseudo stressing, like, is that real? And then other people
Yeah.
were just like, what the fuck? That's so lucky. We're so lucky. And then other people were like, oh no, I
Especially
wanted to
some
do,
of us who hadn't done any coursework. Oh,
not to solo
certain
Barnes
people.
out.
Oh, and then all of a sudden they walk away with A levels that they really
Mm,
shouldn't have done. Um,
yeah.
and you know, what I just found, one thing I found the funniest is the teachers who were telling us, you're going to get 2 weeks off. We're going to set your homework to do during COVID, and it's going to impact your A levels. And in the back of my head, I'm like, shut the fuck up. No,
Yeah.
it isn't. Right?
Yeah.
And there's no way we're coming back to school. It's a national pandemic. I remember I said this to our maths teacher. I went, this is a national pandemic. It's not going to be done in 2 weeks. I'll see you next year, if ever. Goodbye.
Mm, yeah.
And it's just hilarious.
Yeah, we just full sent it at school, right? Like, I remember our head of year at that point, or head of sixth form, going around saying, "No, you guys will do exams. You get back in the study center," and everyone was just like, give over. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, not
yeah.
in a bad way, because she's only doing a job,
Oh
but we
yeah,
were
and
just
if it turned out we did have to do our exams, then yeah, we'd be fucked otherwise. It's a
yeah,
good
but
honor, but
yeah, exactly. But equally, we were all regardless, the whole viewpoint from every sixth one was like, "Yep, we're
yeah,
going home,
yeah.
brilliant."
As
Like,
soon as the inkling of like possibility happened, it's like, nope, we're
"Yep,
gone, mate.
not doing them." Literally, we just all fully agreed that's not fucking happening, which was
Fantastic.
great fun.
That'd be my best day. What about you? What do you think yours was?
I don't know, I don't think I had like a standout day. That was definitely one of them because I do also remember the Discord call when we were all together, and that was great. Um, I'd say it was more. I don't think necessarily great days. I remember sometime in between the pandemics, like the first time of getting able to meet up again. We all played football once after the restrictions got lifted. I
Yes.
loved that because, like, obviously we were used to seeing each other every day at school, so used to, and then but no, no, not anymore. Do you know what I mean? So, and I don't think a lot of us had webcams either. So we weren't able to converse face to face. Do you know what I mean? We could have FaceTime, but we didn't. So,
Yeah.
um, it was one of those ones where when it started to be like, okay, cool, we can go see each other. It was like you can have 6 people outside if you're doing an exercise or something. And we went and played football. And it was like that. That for me was incredible. Like that's the one thing I remember from it was just like just seeing everyone and being in person
Yeah.
again. It was so different. It was such a weird experience.
Those rules and legislation, looking back on it, was just like I understand why they've got to put an arbitrary number on these things, but it's like okay, you can have 6 people together if you're playing football. It's like what the fuck is that
Mm,
rule? What is that? Like I just don't. The main issue I have with the whole thing, and probably go into like the issues we've got with it in a bit, is just the lack of transparency. It's like okay, why have you chosen this number, and what's the evidence showing that any more than that is unsafe? Show
mm,
me, tell me. Why can't I have 9 people playing football? Why can't I have 12 people playing football? And I understand some people are going to take the piss and they're going to be like, yeah, there's 100 of us and we're playing football.
mm.
But, and you're not, you're having a party. But it's just, something about it just doesn't sit right with me. And I mean, you can criticize the government all day about their approach.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is they kind of had to draw a line, right? So that was the thing. I knew well, at the time I knew that the line they were drawing was kind of guesswork, right? They're kind of just going, you can have this, but not that much. So just only 6, but then you have to do something. So 2 meters apart. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
then they're kind of making it up as they go along, which is understandable because
that is the
obviously
reality of it, definitely.
yeah, and in hindsight, I'm sure if they knew the data afterwards, they'd have, maybe made better decisions. I'm not too against how they handled it. I mean, the vaccine rollout, I'm pretty proud of our country for being quite quick on that. But other than
Well,
that,
I don't know. There's issues with it still. As
yeah,
I mean, I think the biggest thing is like I think the vaccine was fine. I think the biggest thing is main other than like the lack of transparency with it, but they did have everything. Is is the amount of wasted money is astronomical, and the amount of corruption is astronomical as well. You
mm,
know, it's like we're giving contracts to our mates. Politicians aren't following the rules. There's fucking, Partygate as an example. What was it? Our health secretary's gone to test his eyes by looking at a castle with his son in the car. It's like, what the
mm,
fuck is that?
mm.
Um, and then there's everyone seems to forgot about that now. He's on I'm a Celeb, where now he went on I'm a Celeb,
At
whatever.
Hancock, he got into shit recently, didn't he? I can't remember what it's
Yeah,
about
he
though.
did. He did because he oh, I can't remember either. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, and and there's billions and billions of pounds wasted on PPE that just went in the bin. Billions
Mm,
of pounds wasted. It was like 2 billion quid on track and trace getting developed by like a mate of a Tory or like contracted by allegedly or something. And it's just
mm,
like that was basically not even used. That was
yeah.
completely pointless, pretty much. And you tie it all together. We're in an economic recession now, and we've just wasted billions of pounds in COVID. And I'm
Mm,
sorry, I refuse to accept the fact that oh, it's fine because it's unprecedented, and we had to go with it, and we're going to make mistakes. You don't make billions and billions of pounds worth of mistakes and get away with it. Oh, in this country you do. In France you wouldn't,
mm,
but in this
mm.
country you do,
Yeah.
and it's ridiculous.
I definitely think there's an aspect. It's like a middle ground, right? There's an aspect of they obviously it's their first time dealing with it. This government's first time dealing with a pandemic, and no one knew what was going on. We didn't know how severe it was, but still, too much bullshit happened. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Too much. happened where we were kind of just sat there like, what the fuck's that about? You know? Do you know what I mean? There's too many scandals, too many things went wrong. Every other day, I remember the deaths are going up. This is happening. This is going on. Fuck this. Loads of things got thrown under the rug because we just said death rates had gone up instead of listening to other news and stuff. It was just a crazy time, man. Like, it was such a negative period of time thinking back.
It
Like,
is.
because all I remember was like you're constantly worried about your like I had my granddad, and he's obviously fine, but I was always worried about I don't want to get if I give him it then I'm fucked. But I was also like I kind of need to work, so I was going to work and then coming back and being like, you're right, granddad, because he had to come, he had to live with us because he didn't really cook or clean or anything, so he
Can't take care of
yeah
himself. Yeah.
yeah, so like we look after him and sort of make food for him and stuff. So he was with us, and it's like I don't want to go. But mum and dad were going to work; they're essential workers. I had a job that was essential at the time, so I was working. So all three of us are going to work. We're getting all these cases every fucking day that you like this is happening. You got such a high chance of getting it, and then it's like okay, and we'll come home, and then granddad's there, and it's like
I
fuck.
mean, ultimately, the government enacted a really effective, in my opinion, mission of just gaslighting the public into doing what they wanted.
Mm,
And that is the harsh reality of it. They went, if you do this, you're gonna kill you now. And it's like, hang on a minute. Why am I being told this? Like, I understand it's effective, but what a shit way of dealing with it. You know, like I say, you're an essential worker. You've got to provide for yourself. There's people out there exploiting the system. I remember I worked for a company, and the guy who owned it was just fucking. It was running the business completely fine throughout the pandemic. If anything, it was more busy throughout the pandemic because people were moving houses to get in and out of
yeah,
the
true.
city, and they get out of the city and into the countryside away from it all. And he was claiming the fucking government, funded what is it, like care package or whatever it is, the resource package, the money package for
Mm.
effects on his business. So he just got 40k out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's
So
ridiculous. A load of people did get a load of fucking cheese money. I'll say.
yeah, in America as well when the relief packages came in or whatever. But and it's a whole other kettle of fish. But the point is that um, the government gaslit the public into doing what they wanted, and they also acted very, very authoritarian. I understand it's a crisis, but it still does not sit right with me. If you mentioned the word vaccine or COVID on YouTube, your video got removed or demonetized. What? Why can't you talk about current events without your stuff
Yeah,
going out the window? This video will probably get demonetized or restricted on Spotify, and we're just speaking about something that happened 3 years ago to the day it
yeah,
almost started now. It's
yeah.
absolutely
Pretty much.
ridiculous. That is authoritarian censorship. Why is that
Mm.
happening in a democratic country? It's
Yeah.
always to help the cause. I don't care. It's not a
What
valid
cause?
excuse.
What causes are helping? I mean, I'm of this opinion for the most part that talking more is always a positive.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like a lot of people. It was hard in the time of COVID because we didn't know the statistics and shit was getting thrown out all the time. Um, so from one point, if loads of shit was getting thrown about and people getting worried, I can understand why they'd be a bit authoritarian to try and limit that. But they were the ones throwing the heavy shit, and then they were kind of censoring
Yeah.
everyone else being
Yeah.
able to talk about
That's
it.
where the panics come from. The government, not from
Yeah,
anyone else.
yeah, because I don't think we felt almost like you weren't getting much other than from the government and from the news. That's how I felt whenever I was. The news was always on. You were always listening to the news and always watching the news, and then the information from everywhere else was just what other people are doing in COVID, never really to do with the actual COVID itself. If that makes sense. But yeah, it was just
Yeah.
a crazy ton of events. I just think it was such a negative period of time thinking back. Like there was like for both of our personal experiences, there were positives and there were negatives, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Such a wasted period of time as well. Like, not only was the university experience ruined, basically, and there's this whole ongoing class action against the universities for how much money the students should be reimbursed or whether I've no idea if that's going to go anywhere. But
mm,
I think the biggest thing is people wasted the time and they just did exactly what we did. They played video games the whole time or whatever. And we could have been learning to code, could have been learning a new language, could have been getting in shape. I tried to get in shape. I built my own squat rack out of bits of wood I found lying around.
I remember
Um, that was so unsafe, but you know that was pretty much the maximum amount of self improvement that I even attempted during the time. And it's just a whole year and a half of your life gone. And what do you get to show out of it? you know, the memories of some loved ones who might have passed away, and knowing that the government fucked everyone over. So not very good, is it?
Yeah, for me, it felt like a almost like a regression of growth. I felt like maybe necessarily not a regression, but at least a maintenance level of you just aren't improving. So for me, coming out of school, you're kind of institutionalized the way you are through just going through school. We were like at a weird period where we were coming out of school and you start to go to uni and start developing and start learning to be independent. And then when you're sort of thrown into this pandemic where we all of us did a lot of degenerate shit. That's what I'll say. A lot of degenerate shit. Just like sleeping too much, being in bed too much, playing way too many games, right? But we knew no better from school. Like we knew no
Yeah,
better from that's just what we did when we had free time during school.
yeah,
And
exactly.
then we also now we just had no responsibilities because we just okay, you go to your lecture in
Yeah,
first year of uni, like you know what I mean? Like
it
it's
was
not
the worst
important.
timing possible, pretty much.
Yeah, I think the only worst thing could have been potentially if we were like 14 or 15 and where it's like prime, you don't give a fuck about school. Like we had to somewhat think about our future because you're going to uni and stuff. And it's like a bit of a transitionary period. But that may make it worse being a transitionary period. Do you know what I mean? Because you want to transition, you're kind of not, you're kind of pseudo transitioning. Like you're going to uni,
Yeah,
but you're not having the experience. And I felt a massive imposter syndrome at uni when I did go in the second year because I was like, I didn't get the experience that the first year's last year got. And they've now got their experience. So I'm kind of the only one who hasn't had this experience of uni from first year. So I'm just kind of thrown in that second year, like, oh, I'm
yeah,
here. It felt like a first year to me. I don't know about you.
yeah,
I guess you
yeah,
redid, didn't you? So
yeah. I was lucky to go from like a foundation year into first year at a different uni, and so that sort of eased that issue. But I do totally understand what you mean, and you know, I still get a bit of imposter syndrome now, just because of the first year of uni, I still didn't go in as much as I should have done, and I didn't engage as much as I should have done with communities and stuff, because I was still recovering from the effects of COVID, the effects of
mm,
on my mental health, the effects from my ability to socialize. You went a whole year without socializing, pretty much. Then you redo freshers again at uni, and you're like, what do I do now, sort of thing.
yeah,
How do I speak to people? I
yeah,
remember, it's just everyone's going to deal with stuff differently as well. Everyone's very different, and we went to an all boys school as well, which doesn't help. Not only have we had
yeah.
5 years of not speaking to girls at an all boys school, then we've had a year locked up not speaking to anyone at
Other
home.
than like a few really close mates about games.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
know what I mean?
You get to uni and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah, it's an overload, isn't it?
Yeah, sensory
Um,
overload.
yeah, I think to be fair, I think a lot of people in our situation have sort of they've gone one way or the other. They've either sort of clung to societies as they have came back, or they've sort of just done it sort of in isolation. A little bit like myself in regards to just like not really interacting with too many people at uni. You're going for a purpose because you didn't really socialize in first year. It's just kind of like, oh well. I mean, I'm in final year now. I'm almost finished, and it feels like I don't even feel like I've been to uni really. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like I've done all the uni work. I go in all the time, but I don't really feel. Maybe I was expecting uni to be different, but I think I haven't had the closure of this is what uni life is because I didn't have first year, so I don't really know too much, which is
yeah.
I
I'm in
feel
a very similar
underqualified to
boat.
give um advice to people coming in from to first year because I'm like, bro, I didn't have it. So do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's probably why I feel like I'm trying to catch up on it now. I've got
Mm,
my trying to start bodybuilding society. I'm part of like projects in different societies, you know, and I do physics, and physics is not the most social course, let's be honest. Um,
mm-hmm.
and so I get along with some people on my course quite well, but not a huge amount of people. Um, I have no interest in joining like physics society, for example.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to make up for the lost time almost, it feels like. And I think a lot of people will do that. A lot of people will try and compensate for the experiences they didn't have. But then at the same time, if you can see that as a positive and make the most of it and go, okay, well, actually, I don't need to be out partying every day or whatever. I'll wait until I'm 35 and I'm rich, and then I'll go out and party because
Mm-hmm.
I've spent all this time on self improvement. That's sort of my viewpoint now. I had my housemates went, well, not my housemates, sorry, some of my friends went to a house party yesterday. I was in the gym doing legs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I had work to do the next morning. I couldn't go. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And I've got 3 interviews next week, presentations to do, coursework to do, and I'm not saying other people don't have a lot of work, but I think if I'd gone and spent the whole first year of uni partying, or if I hadn't had that COVID experience, I wouldn't be working as hard as I am. So there's positives and negatives.
There's definitely positives to that, and like you said, I think it's very quite a few of the people in our Discord and our friend group are like-minded in regards to not necessarily going out and drinking too much. Especially, I mean, most of us are 20, 21, which is maybe the prime age. Maybe 18, 19 is. Maybe we're a little bit too old. But I still think a lot of people at our age often do go out drink and then they live for the weekend sort of thing, which isn't what we're like as a friend group. So I see that
No.
for sure. But I wanted to also go into what you were saying. So why did you want to open or begin this bodybuilding society at your university?
Well, for one, I looked to see if there was one so I could join it, and there wasn't. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay. There's a powerlifting society, and they seem very good, but I've noticed a few issues with them, and additionally, I feel like if I was going to be involved in a society, gym is a core part of my life. I go to gym, at least every other day. If
Yeah.
I'm going to be that involved in something, I want to be a key part of it. I don't just want
Mm.
to be like, oh, I'm a member of powerlifting society or whatever. I want to have a key instrument like in how it's run, and
Yeah.
I want to be able to pass on some knowledge that I've developed and learned to people, especially because I think I've gone through a massive body struggle in the sense of I'm massively underweight. I've got eating disorders with I can't eat half the food on the planet, otherwise I'll die. And it's
Mm.
like, okay, well, I won't actually die. It's just
Yeah.
gluten
You
and
just
dairy intolerant.
be in the toilet for 2 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, I've gone through it. I hope that in a position of authority, I can help people with that and, impart a positive atmosphere or whatever. It's also good for the CV. That is just an undeniable fact. Like that is
Mm.
an element of it. Um, and so that's really what it comes down to. And to be honest, I want to leave like a bit of an impact on the university in some way or another. Um, and so that seems like the way to do it. I've just got to find some members. You need 15 members to be affiliated with the university. So I'm in this weird spot at the minute where I have to advertise the society to get members, but I'm not technically affiliated with the uni. So if I'm putting University of Nottingham Bodybuilding Society, it's in this grey area where
Mm.
is it
It's not a
actually?
thing yet.
Yeah,
So
exactly. But whatever. Like, how else are you supposed to advertise? Like, I'm just gonna have to be done.
you're doing what you
So
can, right?
exactly. Like that's really what it comes down to. And so yeah, that's pretty much the crux of it.
Yeah, I mean, so that really interests me, obviously, because I don't do it right now, but I have been into bodybuilding for a long time, a couple of years now, training like a bodybuilder at least. Um, and I also did the exact same thing as you in regards to maybe a year ago, looking for a bodybuilding society at the Montfort, and there wasn't one. Um, so it was one of those things where, do you think bodybuilding is under or misrepresented or just underrepresented or not seen as a valid sport in
Yeah.
universities or in general? And if you think it is, which I do personally, why do you think that is? And
So
what can we
yeah,
do to change that maybe?
it definitely is. You're 100% right. It definitely is. And I think the issue is the stigmas. I think that's the problem. So
Hmm.
people, so bodybuilding. I really closely follow the professional bodybuilding scene, which is at the Arnold Classic go. That was really really interesting. Seeing some big names place in different positions. I'm quite interested in Big Rummy. He's ended up placing fifth, I think, and he's done better than he did at the Olympia at sixth. You know, everyone thought that what's his name? Oh my gosh, there's a clear favourite. I forgot his name, and he ended up not winning. And so there's this huge element of intrigue to me. It's so fascinating the sport, but for one, the sport's nowhere near as popular as it should be. Even though there's these huge names like Chris Bumstead, Arnold, it doesn't. The people don't tune in and watch the Mr. Olympia. They just don't do it.
They
And
watch the
so
social medias of the influencers.
exactly,
They don't
exactly,
watch the Olympia.
exactly. And I think partially it's this stigma thing where it's men's open, that means they can use steroids, but is that healthy? No one's going to admit to that because it's so career damaging. Um, the same thing in loads of top end sports, but obviously in bodybuilding, it's like a direct, like this is the sort of propping up of men's open, which is the biggest category. Um, and then the harsh reality is with social media at the minute, if you're a natural bodybuilder, which most people would want to be, because they're young, they don't want the health complications, whatever, then social media has made that physique, which is the realistic, naturally achievable physique, pathetic. They've made it look pathetic with
Hmm.
these comparisons to these ridiculous influencers who claim that and they're not. Photoshopped images, different expectations. There was a really interesting video put out where this guy went to this group of girls and he showed them a photo of Chris Bumstead in his prime on stage, and they went, "What would you rate him?" And they were rating him like a 0 or a -2 because he's too muscular, right? And that's fine. I can understand people saying that he's too muscular and they don't like that. That's fair criticism in that
Mm.
sense. But then they showed a photo of him in the off season, and the guy's enormously jacked. He's just not got as defined abs, and they called it a dad bod. So this is arguably the best bodybuilder to walk on the face of the earth, and it's classic division as well. So he's supposed to be more aesthetic,
It's
not just a
aesthetic, yeah.
muscle monster, a mass monster. Sorry, and they call it a dad bod. So that's how twisted expectations are. So I think that's one big reason why it's not as um, sort of as represented at the university level. And secondly, it's just not as popular to compete in.
Yeah,
I'm hoping when I develop it to have like a competition element where we go and compete at amateur competitions, or if inter uni competitions do exist, which I doubt, but I've not looked into it. We can
yeah.
do that, but people don't seem to want to compete as much as they would do in powerlifting, for example.
Yeah, so I think my personal opinion on the matter is that I feel as though when people think of bodybuilding, and a harsh reality of bodybuilding is when you do tend to compete, there is always the aspect of the roid use, right? Always. So I think it's universities not wanting to align themselves with roid use, right? So it's a bit
Yeah,
like it's a negative stereotyping of the sport. So you know when the whole cycling scandal happened where everyone was on roids and stuff, that's a lot more prominent in bodybuilding because if you unless you're in a natty show, and sometimes people get in who are on roids in natty shows,
yeah,
and let's face it, who watches the natty shows? Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Everyone
yeah,
wants to watch the roid shows,
yeah,
but yeah, the point being is that I feel like universities aren't going to want to align themselves with a bodybuilding show where everyone's on roids. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's one of those ones where because the sport has got such a bad stigma to it, like you were saying, and to do with roids and people doing it, and you almost can't compete without juicing, right? At least testosterone on a bare minimum.
Not a high level, definitely not.
High level, you need to be doing more than test, right?
Yeah,
So it's just one of those things where I don't think universities want to align themselves with it. I don't know whether that's because they've thought into it that much or whether they just like roids are bad and bodybuilding's full of roids. We don't want to, if that's as
yeah,
deep as they've
yeah,
gone into it, maybe it is because it's a very much a generation thing. Bodybuilding, I feel like it's a niche thing that is people like us are interested in, but it's not necessarily
yeah,
as popular,
yeah.
like you said. So they maybe have just not thought into it.
Yeah,
So
I'm
another
really hoping
question
to fight that.
I was going to say,
Sorry, go
another
on.
question to you is how are you planning on fighting that if you do get the society started soon?
Well, for one, the second they bring up roid use, I'm going to mention every other sport that does it.
Mm,
I'm going to say, if you honestly think that roids are only being used in top level of bodybuilding, you're off your rocker. They're being
mm,
used in every sport. Every society could have the exact same risks. Especially societies like American football, where it's having as much mass as possible is very important. In certain positions, rugby society, guaranteed there's going to be at least a couple people doing roids there. It's like there's people in the gym at the university who are blatantly doing roids because they're
mm,
that fucking big and their androgen receptors are that swollen. And you know, I'll fight for it. I'll battle for it, and I'll draw comparisons, and I'll say you cannot burden an entire sport based on a stereotype. That's just not fair. And I've got to do this for risk assessment. It'll be I'm not going to include it on the risk assessment, but it'll be interesting to see if they come back and mention anything about it. Um, and also interestingly is if someone turns up to the club and says I'm interested in competing in an untested league, will you support me in it? Will you coach me, find me a coach or whatever? Because that's what I'm hoping it gets to, is a point where we've got coaches affiliated or whatever. I don't know. Are we allowed to do that? Because just because you want to compete in an untested league, that doesn't necessarily mean you're on steroids. You probably are, but that's not
Almost
like it's.
definitely, but
Yeah,
it's not called the steroid league, is it?
exactly,
It's got the
exactly.
untested.
So
Um,
I just don't know how it's going to go, but I will fight it on every level that I can because if they really want to take that approach, it's just not fair.
yeah, I agree, and I think it does get such a bad light in the media. And yeah, sure, bodybuilding is not the healthiest thing in the world, especially when you're on stage. When you're on stage, you're not healthy,
Yeah,
right? But it's obviously for a very small period of time. And I personally would argue that bodybuilding is far healthier in regards to a novice stance. So, say me or you, it's far healthier to get into the gym, to start bodybuilding training, than to be, I don't know, 30-40% body fat, American football player on the D line. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So, just because that's has negative health connotations doesn't stop that from being a factor in that sport. So I feel as though it's obviously a little bit different, but I feel
yeah,
like bodybuilding can't just get targeted out for that, because there's plenty of people who do bodybuilding to a very amateur level, like say me or yourself, or just kids at uni trying to get into it, who would live a far healthier
yeah,
lifestyle
yeah.
undertaking bodybuilding.
Or if they just want to get healthier, that's just an avenue in a constructive way to get healthier. You don't want to powerlift. You're not
Mm,
interested in the strength aspect. You just want to get a bit healthier or some aesthetics. Join bodybuilding society. And equally so, if they want to point out the danger elements, I can just turn around and go, what's wrong with skiing sock then? What's wrong
true.
with winter sock? What's wrong with these extreme sports societies? I'd argue they're a lot more dangerous, in my personal opinion.
Hmm.
And also, I can say that we have a because you have to have a welfare committee member. That's one of the core requirements for any new society. You need a president, a welfare manager, and a treasurer. I would say we have a designated welfare manager, and it is their job to make sure that people are not putting themselves at risk. So that's the angle I'll take. But
Mm.
whether that will work is yet to be seen. I've got to write the constitution still, which will be interesting. But
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, it's something that really interests me, I think. And on top of what you were saying there, I think even say for instance, you're just an 18-year-old girl who's just started to go to uni and you want to tone up a little bit. If you train like a bodybuilder, you're probably going to find you tone more than if you do a few band exercises and you
Yeah,
do
yeah,
yoga, right? Because
yeah,
that's the nature of it. And it's not that you have to juice yourself up and get on roids to look good, but if you train like a bodybuilder, you're going to find you get, maybe more of an
yeah,
hourglass figure, a
yeah.
thinner waist, broader shoulders, which makes your waist seem thinner, right? So little
Yeah.
aspects like that for novices is a big thing, I think. And
I'd
on
love to.
top,
I'd love to
no,
break that
go
stereotype. I was just gonna say, I'd love to break that stereotype you mentioned of people just going to the gym, mainly women going to the gym, being worried about they're gonna get overjacked and they don't want to touch weights, so they'll
yeah,
do band exercise or something, and then they don't see results and they get disencouraged and then they stop going to the gym, and it's because the stereotype and the lack of information. Yeah. So
yeah.
I just wanted to mention that quickly.
No, I fully agree. And on top of that, in regards to like you were saying with skiing and sock, it's obviously these are extreme sports that are dangerous, right? And have the connotation that they could be dangerous. You could have accidents. With bodybuilding, it's very much for the most part, as long as your mental health's there, which is what the welfare guy's for. Um, it's your decision whether you want to juice. It's your decision whether you want to take an extreme diet. So, like for instance, I got like to a stage where I was like, I could compete right now if I wanted to really go into it. I could get a coach and I could then go for a 12-week cut and try and get stage ready and maybe compete. Maybe I don't know, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to put myself through that because I have other things that I want to do in life that don't align with bodybuilding. So doing that training would hinder those, which is why I didn't do it personally. But I made that choice. I'm able to make that choice. Do you know what I mean? So from the danger standpoint, it's your own decision. And you have to take accountability and responsibility for that. It has negative health connotations, or it can in extreme circumstances, but those extreme circumstances are self-inflicted. And that's something that you can talk about because it isn't something that is naturally like an accident occurs. You choose if you're injecting testosterone, it's not an accident. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all your own opinion and your own decision that you take, I guess. So that's another thing as why I don't think it's as dangerous as maybe the stigma it gets potentially.
Yeah, I wonder how much ground the university would have to restrict people's personal decisions like that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's one of those ones where they'd probably take a legal standpoint and say that it's illegal, right?
Yeah, that's true, but it's like, okay, yeah, it's illegal if someone's explicitly taking steroids. But again, if, as we mentioned, if they just want to compete in the untested league, that's not
Mm.
explicit. Like,
Yeah.
you know. So we'll see. That seems like a good place for me to very quickly nip to the toilet.
Yeah, no worries. We can have a little
Time
break.
for a piss.
Yeah, beautiful.
Fantastic.
So, all right, and we are going again. How was your break, Ethan?
Great. We're gonna have to make a compilation of people going to the toilet at some point,
Yeah,
or
well,
needing
yeah.
to go to the toilet.
Yeah. But I wanted to keep on the same rough topic in regards to the gym. So, what have you been thinking? Because we had a conversation about this not long ago. In regards to the new trend, it seemed maybe about a week ago, of sort of girls and guys recording in the gym as people sort of stare at them or just look their way and them taking almost offense, as not as if they own the gym, but as if looking at them is almost like that you can't do that in the gym. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's that is almost like offensive to stare at someone or to even look their way whilst they're either exercising and whatnot.
Well, not even that. There's the people just videoing other people blatantly who they think are doing an exercise wrong or like making a mess of themselves somehow or in the gym.
Mm,
And if it's up to me and I could just wave a wand, I'd just ban all phones in the gym, to be
yeah.
honest. And it's just that fucking simple. Or you can't record in the gym. That's probably a better solution, so you can still use your phone for music or whatever. If you're caught recording in the gym, you're fucking kicked out. Your membership's revoked. That's my take, and that's because one, it's a sensitive area. You're exposing yourself, in a way that you could be doing something wrong, or you're really putting your level of experience and your insecurities up for everyone to see when you go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, it's completely fine and not a problem. But for example, I saw a video of this older gentleman who was in the gym and he was really, really trying his best, just improving his fitness, whatever. And some young bloke just started recording him, like, what's this old geezer doing in the gym? And it's like, it's
Yeah.
just horrendous to me. And then obviously there's the whole sort of thing you talked about where the trend to get social media clout saying that, oh, look at this guy creeping on me, and he like glances over for a brief second. Not only is that a
Mm,
problem because it just completely ruins like the gym atmosphere doing that, and also the poor guy, that's just completely unwarranted. But the biggest problem is it takes away from actual cases of people being harassed in that environment. It just makes it's like the boy who cried
the
wolf
boy cried
scenario.
wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because of that, I would probably just ban all recording in the gym, hands down. Like, why do unless you have explicit permission from the gym? You're not half the time people recording are wannabe influencers, and it's like, look, you're not an influencer. Shut up, for one. And if you're an aspiring influencer or something, then that's fine. But I don't think it's just out of hand and out of control at this point. And I think the bad's starting to outweigh the good. There are issues with that, obviously, where what if you want to record yourself to see what your form's like,
Mm,
for example, and maybe that's something that needs to be viewed on a case by case basis, where you just go to the gym for an office. Oh, I'm just going to record myself doing this squat. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine. Something like that. Um, but I think it's just getting out of hand now, to be honest. And at least there seems to be quite a good pushback against it. You know, people aren't sort of just going head over heels and falling for the tactics. The clout tactics. They're pushing back and saying, at least from what I've seen, it's supposed to be an accommodating and friendly environment. Don't take the piss out of people. If you see someone who looks like need help, go and offer help. You know, don't be a
yeah.
creep, but at the same time, you have a right to just look around the gym and do shit, especially like, oh, someone's doing a heavy bench press. I'm watching them. Do they need help? Are they going to need a spot? And then I get accused of being a creep afterwards. It's like, okay, that's clearly not good. And so that's probably my take. And I'd be interested to hear what you say or what you think about the idea of just banning recording.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually I differ from you a little bit here. So I agree with what you're saying, but in a little bit of an opposite way. So I think recording in the gym is fine. I think recording others in the gym isn't fine.
Yeah,
So, like you're saying, I very regularly record myself if I'm doing a box jump, if I'm doing a plank, if I'm doing a deadlift. I need to know how my form looks. I need to know if the rep was good. It may have felt shit but looked good. Do you know what I mean? So I need to know if my form's good. I need to know what I'm doing is correct. So I have no issue with that. I think that's a good thing. I think people should do that more often. The issue is when you get people, first of all, recording their gains in changing rooms when there's other guys half naked in the same thing. It's like,
yeah,
bro, that's not a thing. Like, so whenever I go, I had a gym. I've just changed gyms. So in my old gym, there's a little tiny room with down lighting, that literally pointless room for people to get changed if they don't want to get naked in the other changing room. And I used that if I wanted to take a video of myself and, like, check, I don't know, striations or like biceps or fucking different posing and how that looked. Because if you just stick it in the changing room, it goes against people. Like, people are getting changed in there. Do you know what I mean? You can't, if you were having a piss and someone just walked up to you and recorded you, you'd feel a little bit
yeah,
uncomfortable. So that's unacceptable. So if you're going to do it in a changing room, it has to be completely in like a sanctioned area away from everyone else. Um, so I agree with that. Maybe ban, potentially, or just limiting it because changing room shouldn't occur. And then in regards to the actual gym, I think, like I said, I think recording yourself is fine, but you have to be very, very aware of your surroundings. And if by, say, you're in a deadlift, you're doing a deadlift, and next to you there's a girl who's squatting, right? Maybe just walk up to her and say, "Hi, I'm gonna record my deadlift for my form. I'll just be 2 minutes. If you want to step out of the frame, that's fine. If you don't care, that's fine also. But I'm just letting you know because obviously everyone's sharing this area, right? So
yeah,
I think it's about just being accommodating and
yeah,
using your common sense a little bit more. Like you said, people do take it out of context, but I think it should be a case by case basis where if someone's recording someone else and they post it on social media and say, "Ha ha, look at this guy," then they're held accountable. And if the gym finds out, that's when they can sanction that person. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? So that's probably
yeah,
where I sit on that. But in regards to what you were saying about, like, that poor guy, in regards to like getting looking across and getting glared at, I think you'll probably agree with me in regards to most gym guys have this thing, which is either the ceiling or the floor. They look very, very good when a girl's near you in the gym, right? Because I feel
yeah,
as a guy, it's not a sense of you feel shy that the girl's working out next to you. That's not the case at all. But it's the fact that you feel like you can't look in that direction because if you do, you're a creep. So, oh shit, she's doing fucking RDLs next to me. I guess that thing on the floor is really good when I do my lat raises and I start doing them. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Um, and it's not, yeah, it's just a weird thing because you don't get that with other guys. With other guys, is whatever. But you feel, as a guy in the gym, I feel like I can't look at girls a certain way, and that's been amplified by this trend of, oh, a guy looks across at you because you're struggling on a squat. He's like, oh, we might need to help you. Nope, you're a creep staring at your ass. That isn't the case.
yeah. Well,
Obviously
it's the
there are
whole,
some creeps in the gym, but like
yeah.
for the most part.
Well, it's the exact same scenario with the whole like I'm going up the stairs. There's a guy in front of me. Let's count how many steps I'm on.
Yeah.
These stairs are looking fascinating today. When in
Yeah.
reality, you could just be looking forwards, just like not even looking at her, just looking around or whatever. But if she
Hmm.
turns around and sees you anywhere near, like anything resembling you looking at her as she goes up the stairs in front of you, it's like, okay, well that's fucking finished then, isn't it? And on
Yeah.
one hand, it is a chivalry thing because it's this sort of like traditionally polite thing where it's like you have you could be doing it, and just because it's not you doing it in like a certain way,
Mm.
you just decide not to do it at all because you're it's like this traditional chivalry idea or whatever, and that's fine. But it's when that spills over to public places like the gym where it's just not possible to, in some cases, not be in a compromising position. Like if someone's doing squats and you look at them, that is a compromising position, and that's just the
Hmm.
nature of the exercise. There's nothing you can do about that. And then it's a case of like, okay, are you looking across because she may need help, because she's just dropped her phone and not realised, because various other innocent reasons, or are you looking across because you're being a creep? And it's like, I don't fucking know, man. It's so difficult to to tackle the issue, and that's why I'm saying potentially the answer might be to just get rid of all cameras. And
Yeah.
this is from someone who I literally had to do this the other day. I was recording myself squatting, and I wanted to check my depth, and I had a girl come up to me and asked if she could hip thrust behind me, and I went, "That's not a problem." And then I went to record myself, and I just asked her very politely, "Sorry, I'm very sorry. I'm just going to record myself doing these squats. Are you okay with that?" She goes, "Yeah, that's not a problem, whatever." And sometimes that level of communication is enough, but it's the outlying
Hmm.
shit experiences that just ruin it for everyone else.
Yeah.
And with social media, they're the only ones. You don't see the positive experiences, you just see the negative ones. And so, if people can't behave, just get rid of it, maybe. And then, in certain, unless it's in certain cases where you ask the gym staff member, can you just record me, or can you fucking just I'm just gonna do this. Is that okay? I don't know. That might be the simplest solution. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those. It's almost like a question that has no answer. Almost, it's very hard to say if there's a solution to the problem. It's just unfortunate that that's happening a lot recently, and it's very similar to the boy cried wolf in regards to if I'm looking across, say, I'll look across, you just look around the gym, right? You're just looking around, you can do that, you're in the gym, right? If I see some guy on bench and he's doing a weight that I'm looking at him and I'm looking at that weight and I'm like, he's probably going for a 1 rep max right now. I'm going to watch that for his safety, right?
Yeah. And also
Not
for the
because,
fun of it.
yeah, also because it's like, fuck yeah, dude, if you're going to go for
Yeah,
that, fuck yeah, let's
exactly.
get it up,
Yeah.
get it up, get it, a bit of like gym comradeship. But,
If that's a
it,
girl, you're not doing that now.
no,
No, it's banned.
if it's a female, even if I think fucking hell that could be, no, it's not even that. I don't even look that direction. I don't even clock whether it could be a 1 rep max because looking that way for that long could be creepy. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I think a lot of guys think the exact same way as what I'm saying now. So it's just unfortunate because it kind of ruins the gym culture of wanting everyone to do well there because you can only do it for 50% of the people who are in there. And then on top of that, you just feel a little bit restricted in regards to helping if you're needed. And that's how it feels in the gym. It's like you're in the gym to improve yourself, so is everyone else. You're all in the same boat, you're all doing the same thing. It's an amazing place to be for that reason. But if you feel like you could be perceived a certain way by doing something like looking across a certain way and being called a creep or being thought of as a creep, it just ruins it a little bit because you feel a little bit restricted. Whereas it should be this place where it's a very wholesome place, I think. But then bringing in issues like that, it makes it all a little bit less
Yeah.
pure, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm going to the gym to like vent off some energy and to escape the day-to-day bullshit. And then
Yeah,
all of a sudden, like the clout chasing and the bullshit is seeping into your safe space, and it's like, oh man, this is just so painful to see the slow corruption of such a heavenly institution. But
yeah, it feels
well,
that way.
I don't know, man. It's just so, and a part of it is because of the whole like gym culture has exploded recently as well, and so because of that, you can get more and more bad apples in the bowl.
Yeah,
Everyone's such a there's this stereotype of all the gamers are now gym lads.
mm,
And for our group, that's true.
yeah,
So and that's just one example of the growth in gym culture that we've had, and that's a good thing, obviously, but there needs to be measures to account for the fact that there are going to be cases of actual gym creeping, and b cases of innocent things happening but getting mistaken for that, and then it overshadows the actual serious issues, and then they're not getting the attention they deserve, or there's not being facilities put in place for people who need them, and it doesn't help anyone. It does not help anybody, and I'm happy to see that it's getting called out, and I'm happy to see there's people fighting against it. And I'm
yeah.
happy to see that these videos of people just trying to embarrass other people get posted, and then they get taken down the next day because they've been flooded with hate in the comments saying, "Why are you doing this?" Like, that person, just leave
He
them
did
alone.
nothing wrong,
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and at least the atmosphere seems to be fairly towards the right direction, at least.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it also depends on the gym. So I'm a big advocate for bringing fucking gym etiquette back because I think gym etiquette's been lost a little bit. That may just be because I've moved to a city, and more people are getting into the gym, and there's a lot of at commercial gyms in cities. There's no gym etiquette. Like it's every man for himself. You're not if you do some preacher curls, you're not putting the weights back.
Yeah,
Dumbbells, fuck it, leave them anywhere. Oh, doing a deadlift, leave my max deadlift on the bar and walk off, do something else. and it that's the thing. The gym environment is cursed by the people who are in there, or it can be pure because of the people in there.
Yeah.
So I think quite often with these commercial gyms, you have a very shitty environment where people are leaving weights on, not putting dumbbells back, not asking, or just kind of taking stuff. People hogging machines. That's another one. There's a lot of things that are happening in commercial gyms in cities that don't happen in where we're from in our little village in our gym.
Yeah.
It's where gym etiquette is at a very high level. I think,
Yeah.
to be fair, any advice for anyone who would be to getting into a gym or getting into the gym, if you know it's still something you want to do, it is always worth paying that extra little bit of money to go to a better gym, in my opinion. Say in Leicester, where I'm currently at, I've just changed from a £15 membership to a £27.50 membership to a different gym, but it's so worth it for me. Like, the gym is 10 times better, the people are better, the environment's better. I'd never really spoke to anyone in my old gym, and I've been there for 2.5 years. Didn't really speak to anyone because there was new faces every day. The new one I've gone to, it's so much smaller, but it's got like a community. They do classes, they do like drinking events and stuff, they do socials. So I just think, like, your gym experience is going to be depicted by which gym you go to. So if it's something you really want to consider, don't cheap out on a shit gym if you can afford it. Do you know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
going to the best gym possible, it really has its benefits. You pay for what you get.
That raises an interesting question, though, about elitism in the gym. And so,
Mm.
luckily, that's not really like, it doesn't seem to be that bad compared to some other activities like chess has a bad elitism problem, for example. But
Mm.
the question, I suppose, that I could ask is, to what level do you think having a private gym that is entry is based upon your lifts, or perhaps instead of that high price range, to what level is that elitism, and to what level is that you just wanting to get a bit of that gym culture back that you were talking about?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one. With the lifts one, I can understand it if it's a powerlifting gym. Um, so I can understand it if you don't want your powerlifting equipment. If you've got 8 racks or 8 powerlifting stations, you don't want people in there with 5 of their mates who've never deadlifted before, because if it gets hogged up, the people who are there to train can't as much, and it's unfortunate, but for powerlifting I understand it. Um, but I think the price thing is kind of fine. Like, when you first start at the gym, you're gonna go to a cheaper gym probably. You're gonna understand what happens, and then you pay for what you get. Because I don't think you can have. I don't think there's a way of safeguarding a good gym at a cheap price,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So there's a lot of people who want to go to gyms. The only way would be to have a far bigger gyms at a far higher price range, but then people would stop going. So I think it is just a case of you pay for what you get. And I don't think a gym membership is that outlandishly priced, honestly. So it's like, what, maybe on a very expensive end, 27 or 30 quid a month, right? So what, just over 300 quid a year, depending on which one you go for. So I don't think it's too elitist. I just think it throws out some of the bad apples, or some of the people who take it less seriously. And
Yeah.
it what I've seen from changing gyms is, I've gone from a place where there's a lot of 16, 17, 18-year olds coming in, trying to train, not knowing what they're doing, and hogging machines, which is, it's fine. I don't mind it, because everyone's done that before. You start somewhere, and you start by going in with your mates and hogging machines and being Ronnie Coleman and, yeah, buddy, and that's fine. Has got its place, and I genuinely like that. But I'm at a point now where I've had that for so long, I just want to move on. I don't want to be like a big fish in a big fish in a little pond. I want to just be in with everyone else who is at a similar level to me, where we can just be like, okay, we understand gym etiquette. We've been doing it long enough. I understand. I'm not going to get in your face. We're not going to interact with each other. It's just a good environment, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and for me, that little bit of increased price, I'm more than willing to pay. And people who aren't, that's fine. I think the price is fine. Putting it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, well, and main reason I mentioned that is because I've had some pretty bad experiences with commercial gyms. One of the big commercial gyms here in Nottingham, I won't say which one, is absolutely dreadful in my opinion. None of the equipment's ever replaced. They've got nowhere near enough clips of any of the bars, so half the time you can't use them. And the people there are atrocious. It's literally bottom of the barrel, scraping the barrel. And that sounds harsh, but to give some context to that, I was on the dip, what's it called, dip bar, and I was on there. I did like 3 sets of dips. I was literally just finishing my 3rd set. This guy comes up to me. I'm in the middle of my set. He's like, "Excuse me, bro. Excuse me, bro. Yeah, I was actually on this. Yeah, I was actually on this." And he's done that just to see if he can make me move, just to see if he's like alpha dog, get me to pussy out and move. So I finished my set. I'm like, "I've actually just finished, mate. So there you go." So I've managed to avoid that situation by pure chance.
Yeah.
But the fact that that's an acceptable environment, and it's like this guy wasn't this huge gym guy, because most time it's not the huge gym guys doing this. It's just like modestly built bloke in a tracksuit who thinks he's hard, and it's like he's done it purely for an ego thing. And then compare that to the gym I went to next after that gym. I was like, I'm just fed up this fucking gym. I'm paying more to go to a different gym. I went to a really old school boxing gym, and it's in a very rough part of Nottingham, and I absolutely fucking loved it. First day I walk in, there's a guy on the bench. He's absolutely wham. He's covered in tattoos, and he's got a wife beater on, a huge big necklace on, and he's like, "Yeah, I've just got out the joint. I've been in the slammer, but come to this gym." And he was the nicest guy
Nicest guy.
nicest guy I've ever met in a gym. He was so nice, and he literally took me around the gym, random bloke in the gym, no affiliation with the gym. He was like, "Yeah, this is where I train, this is where I box. Yeah, you should. This is why I think you should join X, Y, and Z." And it's like, it's absolutely ridiculous, like the difference in standards, the difference in quality. And that's why I'm a big advocate for these old school sort of like rough gyms that people perhaps think of are actually really horrible to be in. They're usually better to be in.
Ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you said earlier about the fact that the guy who was coming up to you and trying to be a bit macho was someone who's maybe not a gym goer, or a frequent gym goer, and the person who is nicer. I fully agree with that, and I've found that with most things, because when you go into the gym, it's a place of, for a lot of people, insecurity, right? A lot of people get insecure about going to the gym. It's quite it's a scary place to start, right? So people get very uptight about it when they first begin. So the people who are often the ones who are projecting their insecurities on you by being like, "Well, are you on this or this other shit?" are the people who don't go, right? The people who do go are completely comfortable in the gym. They're not going to be dicks for the most part. You have your, odd eggs, but for the most part, that reigns true, I think. So, like, from changing gyms, I've only found that it's just a nicer atmosphere, because the guys, they're gym goers. You can tell by their physiques. They've been going for a long time. They're used to it. I've been going for a long time. You just mutual respect. You know what's going on, and it's just a nice environment where you can chat to them and you feel completely comfortable. Whereas, yeah, the other gym I was going to was rough. You get 70, 80, 90 people in there at once, and it's just like completely packed. The machines are broken. Everyone's pissed off. Everyone's trying to get on. They're a different machine. They're like, "Oh yeah, can we work in then?" And I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but then we end up taking loads of weights off and just exchanging for ages, and it's just not a nice experience. It kind of ruins it a little bit. But I think that's just the issue with commercial gyms, and I will always advocate for an independent or private if you can. Independents are normally good enough, but like, if you can get access to a private gym, fucking go for it. I don't see why you wouldn't.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just harsh reality of the situation. Anything that's commercial and easy to access is usually like that because it's lesser in quality. And I mean, I'm gonna ruffle some feathers here, but it's the same with the NHS. There's a reason private healthcare is better than public healthcare.
Yeah, obviously.
It's because you've got to pay for it, and that is just the way things are. Unfortunately, that does not mean that the commercially available or freely available different one should be shit.
Yeah.
It should strive to be the best it can. And there should be things in place to make sure that it's the best it can. These big commercial gym companies shouldn't get away with just making their gyms completely dog shit because they know that people will go because they're so big and they're so well known, and because they are a little bit cheaper than the other ones. But they do get away with it. They get away with it with clever marketing, clever advertising, and more than anything else, they get away with it because of the stigma behind those other gyms where they thrive off the fact that people think, oh, a private gym's going to be worse, or I don't want to be around all these wham guys, or this, that, and the other. And it's actually a much, much better and a much more wholesome and a much more efficient environment to improve yourself in and to meet people and to make friends and to socialize and everything else that you brought up. And it's just such a shame that that's the
Yeah,
stigma around it. We've
I
varied quite a
fully
lot off
agree.
COVID, haven't we? Yeah.
Sorry, what did you say? You cut out a little bit for me.
Oh,
Nice.
I just said we've varied quite a lot off COVID, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. It's just you mentioned the gym thing, and obviously we've got quite a lot that we can talk about for gym. I mean, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, to address what we said at the start, I think it is elitist in regards to, based off lifts or based off, having it a little bit more expensive. But in the reality of a capitalist society, that's kind of, what it is. And I'm willing to pay that price. If my gym was 45 quid, I'd still pay it because,
Yeah.
like, the gym is, I go every day. It's like what I look forward to in a day for the most part. So I'm not willing I'm willing to sacrifice a lot more money to get a better experience, right?
Yeah, of
And you're only
course.
going to get that at the more expensive gyms where they can afford to, take people with higher profit margins so that they can have less people in there, which makes it a better experience. Because these commercial gyms are just overcrowded. They're overcrowded. All of the machines are always broken, missing shit. People steal from them. It's a horrible environment. It's just, they can be very shit. That's not to say don't go to them, because you should go to them if you want to start gym, and you probably won't find it actually that bad. But for someone who's been going for a little while, you really
You
do
notice the
notice it.
differences, yeah.
You notice the difference, whereas you might not if you're just a sort of novice or getting into it. But that's just my opinion anyway. So I agree with you, but I think it's got its place, unfortunately, with how things work and how things are run. Do you know what I mean?
Yep, exactly like you say, that is the nature of a capitalist society.
Yeah.
That it is what it is.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's not unfixable or that it's not completely like how things need to be. So
Yeah, it's just and as well. I mean, I think it just comes from. I think these gyms need to try and be a little bit more enforcing of rules. They do it in America more, which I think could be good and bad. But in the UK, they don't really enforce any rules onto you like that much. Like with the gym, like if you don't put your weights back, it's like more of a courtesy rather than a rule. Um,
yeah, yeah,
and by people not doing those kind of things, it ruins the environment for everyone else. So I
yeah,
think it's important for people to, or for maybe these commercial gyms to start properly honing down on, look, you put your weights back, you don't film unless you're filming yourself or you ask people around you. They have these rules that in America they have, and it works a little bit better. Yeah, you have your odd cases where it goes wrong, but you have a better overall gym environment, right? And I feel like it's lacking in cities in the UK from what I've seen from my
yeah,
experience.
yeah. And I mean, this is quite a hot take, but that's why I don't think there's actually that much wrong with Planet Fitness in America.
Mm,
Because, yeah, the rules they do have are quite silly, where it's like, you know, there's limits on dress code and whatever. You can spend all day picking apart things that you could not agree with the rule set. But ultimately, they have rules and they enforce them.
mm,
And they are a reasonably successful company. And
yeah,
so those two things are not like independent
there's
of each other. They're
yeah,
not
there's a
mutually
significant
exclusive.
relationship between the two.
Yeah, and that's why personally I don't think there's a problem with having a brand identity like they have, where okay, we're super against. Okay, we're trying to be as inclusive as possible, but they're not because they actually exclude a lot of people. But
Yeah.
the point is that's their identity and they own it and they enforce the rules. And so if you're going to have
Mm,
rules and you're going to have courtesies, at least enforce them. Even if they're not very good rules, at least enforce them. At least stick by your
yeah.
principles.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, like I said, my other gym, it's the point where they've maybe got 2 or 3 staff members on at once. Maybe. Sometimes it's just one. And they've got maybe 80, 70 people in that gym. They can't go around enforcing all the rules. You just can't. There's
And they
not enough
don't care.
staff on. And yeah, they don't care. Because obviously they're just minimum wage workers just trying to get a buck and go home. If I was them, I wouldn't care either.
Yeah.
Right? But it's just an unfortunate reality. Um, which is why I will say yet again, I would always advise going to an independent gym if you can, because it is such a better experience, especially if you're in a city. It's worth the extra money if you can afford it. But if you're not in a city, just honestly, if you can drive, go to one. Like, it's just, for
Yeah.
me, it's just such a better experience that you'll have. And I think a lot of people are put off. They go to commercial gyms and they're put off the gym, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
not.
1,000,000%.
It's not because they don't like exercise. It's because of the experience they get through the negative environment that a commercial gym causes for quite a lot of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do you fix that? Other than the rule setting and employing more staff or increasing the wages of staff, which they're not going to do because they're large corporations and they're just in it for the profit.
Yeah.
There's no way to deal with it. And that, I think that's probably a good thing to realize as a gym goer. Think to yourself, well, there's a reason it's cheaper, and it is going to be more poorly run. The equipment's going to be worse. It's going to be broken. The staff aren't going to care because that's the nature of a large corporation trying to make a quick buck, right? So it's like you pay for what you get, and with the independent gyms, it's just such a better experience overall, I think.
Yeah, well, just to show the difference. So this big gym I went to, you had an app you had to download, and you scan that, you walk in, you don't even have to speak to a single person to enter the gym. And for some reason, if you have to speak to a person, they'll direct you to a screen to press on and to solve your query for you if you want to start membership or something. I'm sure if they could, they'd replace every single functionality with robots and just not have anyone there. Um, and then compare that to the boxing gym I went to. I Me buying a membership was me writing my name down in a book. Yeah. And then I walked in and was like, "You're right, Steve, I'm here today." He's like,
Mm.
"Good lad." And that's it. There's
Yeah.
that's the difference. It's ridiculous. And another experience I had at this boxing gym is I came in on a Sunday and it was completely empty. There's no one there apart from one bloke. And I said to him, like, "Oh, is it always this day on a Sunday?" And he goes,
Mm.
"Mate, we're closed. I'm the owner.
Oh
We're actually
wow.
closed on a Sunday, but I'm here getting half an hour's workout in if you want to join me."
Really?
Yep. And so the owner, me and him, we had a little workout in the gym, just me and him. And
Yeah.
there's 0% chance that would happen at a big gym. Um,
No.
and afterwards, he said he could only be there for half an hour, but I finished before him because I was trying to be courteous and just
Yeah.
get a bit done and get out of his hair. And he was like, "Mate, stay if you want to. Like, it's fine. I'll wait for you. It's not a problem."
Yeah.
He's absolutely, absolutely lovely bloke. And again, on the outside, rough part of Nottingham, rough
He's
gym. It
probably
looks
wham
like
as hell, looks like a drug dealer, but like,
he's just a
yeah,
lovely, lovely
nicest
guy
guy.
though. Yeah,
Yeah.
and and that is the reality of it, and that is the nice thing about gym culture. And that's the thing when you look at someone and you see that they've built this physique, that's not because they've taken some cheap, easy way out. Even if they're on steroids, that doesn't mean that they haven't worked hard. That means
Mm.
that it just means that they're able to recover easier in some cases. So they actually have, they're pushing their body more
Hmm.
because they're risking their health. They're having these cost benefit trade offs or whatever. And those people who are committed to something in such a way that you can physically see the growth on them, people who are that committed to things are usually, for one, passionate about what they're doing, and so they're going to be helpful and they're going to be friendly. For two, they've been there for years. They're going to know all the struggles that you're going through, and they're going to want to make it the best environment as they can. And three, people who are that committed to something or that invested in something that is purely self-beneficial are usually quite nice.
Yeah.
And that's not always true, but in general, I think that is the case.
Yeah, because they lack the insecurities that they would project onto others. If because they're just confident in what they've done. They've achieved a physique. They're proud of themselves. They're probably not content. I know they're not content, but they're probably proud of their physiques, and they're just not insecure about how they look, and they're just wanting to help others, and they have pure intentions, right? Whereas I think people who maybe haven't been in the gym as long, who have just maybe started, but they were known as like the big kid
Yeah.
in school, but now they're not the big kid because they're in a gym and there's big guys in there. They want to be like, oh fuck this guy,
Mm.
I'm bigger than yeah. And it's just a bit of a macho thing, and it is a bit of a guy thing,
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, like you said, the bigger guys in general seem to be such the nicer guys opposed to
Yeah.
but that's just what we've that's from our experience. And I don't know what it'd be like in other countries, but in the UK, that's how it seems
It's
to
probably
me.
better in other countries. Again, it's just this UK attitude of, whatever, push on through it or whatever, and not speak to anyone and be antisocial and whatever the rest of it. I mean, another
Yeah.
example at this boxing gym, I got a half an hour to an hour free shoulder recovery session by
Oh
this
really?
random bloke. He was like,
Yeah.
um, he struck up a conversation with me because he saw I was doing lat raises or something. Oh, not lat
Yeah.
raises, like side raises, and he went like, "Oh, like how you doing?" Whatever, introduced himself. He was like, "Do you mind if I give you some advice?" And I was
Mm.
like, "No, not at all." And he was like, "Oh, well, you're doing this wrong, this wrong." And
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, it's because I'm injured. My
Yeah.
shoulder, like I know that my shoulder's fucked."
Yeah.
And the guy spent an hour with me, I think it was, showing me different shoulder exercises. He's like, "Yeah, my cousin's really badly injured his shoulder. It's probably a
Mm.
rotator cuff. These are the exercises you should do to fix it. Really feel that stretch." Walking me through all these things, and then we went on and did legs afterwards. And so,
Yeah.
you know, the closest thing you'd get to that at a commercial gym, some guy would laugh at you and go, "You, what the fuck are you doing? You're doing that wrong." Or
Or more critique you in a non-constructive way.
yeah,
You'd be like, "Oh,
exactly.
you're doing that wrong, bro. Like, you should do this. You should do this," and they'll probably still help you. Commercial gyms aren't all negative. They will probably still help you, but it seems a lot more pure, and the intentions seem a lot better
Yeah,
in an independent gym from my experience. But
yeah, I totally agree.
yeah, I just think the gym cultures are completely different in that regard. But I reckon that's probably a good place to wrap everything up. If you're cool with that.
Yeah, sounds good to
Yeah,
me.
beautiful. Well, thanks for the episode, bro. I really appreciate you coming on, even though some others didn't.
That's fine. Hopefully, we'll have some more variety next week. Might have some special guests as well. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll try and sort something out. I think there's been a little bit of a slow up with the podcast recently because of my uni work that's got to be doing. But I should be back on it next week. We should be fine for next week, and we'll just keep rolling them out as and when we can. And when the exams come, it might slow up a little bit, but then we should be back on it.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate you coming on, bro, and make sure to drink water.
Yeah,
All right.
buddy.